to the Titanic story. Another exhibit here at the GEO Centre. "1,500 persons perish." Titanic wreck simulator. The sinking of the Titanic actually took place on my birthday, April 15th. That's my birthday. Until the 1930s, when airplanes, flying boats, came along, the only way to cross the Atlantic was by boat. In the days before steam engines, boats were propelled by wind and sail, and ocean crossing could take weeks and could involve storms, serious illness, and even shipwreck. In the mid-1800s, with ships powered by steam engines, transatlantic passage became faster, cheaper, and safer. During the final half of the 1800s, trade between Britain and the United States had increased sevenfold. In that period, the population of the United States had quadrupled. Overall demand for transatlantic passage had outstripped available capacity. Over half the passengers were immigrants looking for a new life in North America. On most early steamships, accommodation was poor, sanitation was primitive, and passengers sometimes died of disease. Up until the 1900s, ocean travel was still not a pleasure and involved real risk. Early travel steamships. Oh wow. These are steamships with sails on them. I never knew that existed. International cast of characters. There's an iceberg. Here's the side of the Titanic right here. At 1:30 p.m., the Titanic made its way on its maiden voyage. So along came luxury ocean liners. In 1907, Bruce Ismay and William Peary discussed plans for a new class of ocean liner. Enormous floating palaces, 50% larger. The British White Star Line had been purchased by the super-rich American financier J.P. Morgan as part of Morgan's overall plan to take control of transatlantic shipping, but he had no background in shipping. Morgan and White Star set out to obliterate the Cunard Line by building the world's 3 largest, most luxurious passenger ships. Each of those ships met a disastrous end. Maximum shipboard comfort and special amenities for passengers should be a positive thing. However, in the White Star's case, the underlying objective was to crush the competition and establish a monopoly. White Star gave an exclusive wireless concession on Titanic to the Marconi Company. The wireless station as used on Titanic was primarily a novelty for passengers. Incoming ships' messages theoretically took priority, but some, especially the final and most urgent ice warnings, were totally ignored by the Marconi operator. Titanic only carried enough lifeboats for 1/3 of her capacity of all people on board. The shipbuilder's recommendation for more lifeboats was rejected by White Star because they would clutter up the deck. White Star's refusal to add more lifeboats was a potential sentence of death for the 2,000 people who could be on the Titanic, but not accommodated in the lifeboats provided. White Star's large, luxurious ships were to be named Olympic, Titanic, and Gigantic, later renamed Britannic. Those chosen names reflected Morgan's obsession, J.P. Morgan, with wielding power, but his audacity and unbridled ambition. He believed that he and his ideas were omnipotent. He also believed that the strategic masterstroke for his battle of the transatlantic was essential. These ships were his chosen means to deliver that stroke. Building the giants. When Olympic was launched on October 10th, 1910, it was the largest moving object ever created by man. White Star expected a new era of transatlantic travel to begin. Their new liners were intended to outdo the Cunard ships in size, speed, and luxury. On May 31st, 1911, as thousands of onlookers watched and cheered, Titanic's hull was launched. That same day, Harland and Wolff, having completed outfitting of the Olympic, delivered her to White Star. While Titanic underwent her 10 months of fitting out, Olympic was intended to quickly capture the attention and demand from transatlantic travelers. Olympic failed to do that. On the evening of April 2nd, 1912, little more than a week before her inaugural voyage, the completed Titanic left Belfast, Ireland for Southampton. People standing on the pier gazed in awe at the giant liner towering over them. Look at those little people there. The decks of the Titanic. 1, 2, 3, 4 decks, I guess. Boat deck. A deck, promenade, B deck, the bridge, and shelter. In size and luxury, Olympic and Titanic surpassed all ships on the North Atlantic. Morgan's and Ismay's objective was to lure and indulge passengers with unprecedented attractions. On the super deluxe Titanic, entertainment and diversions included a squash and racket court, Turkish baths, a fully equipped gymnasium, a plunge swimming pool, libraries, 4 electric elevators, 3 in first class and 1 in second. And for the wealthiest passengers, deluxe suites with their own private promenades. Refined and elegant fittings and furnishings were included throughout. No expense was spared. For example, the first-class smoking room had hand-carved mahogany woodwork, inlaid with mother-of-pearl and furniture with splendid dark green leather upholstery. Completing the grandeur was a replica of a French sidewalk cafe, the Café Parisien. The Café Parisien served gourmet meals in an exclusive setting for first-class passengers. Titanic and her sister ship Olympic were the first liners in history to have a gymnasium. Another of Titanic's unprecedented luxuries was the plunge, a swimming pool, pictured here. Despite the opulence and extravagance of Titanic's interior appointments, much cost containment had taken place in other areas of her design. These cost reduction measures would prove disastrous for the passengers and crew, and ultimately for the business strategy of Morgan and the White Star. While each of the White Star's 3 superliners came to a disastrous end, the interest in large and luxurious but safer liners continues to the present day. Titanic, practically unsinkable. White Star only advertised Titanic and Olympic as the largest and finest steamers in the world, but the perception of the press and the public was that Titanic was unsinkable. Titanic's hull was divided into 16 watertight compartments. 12 of the bulkheads had electric doors that could be closed from the bridge. Titanic could remain afloat with any 2 of her 16 compartments flooded, or even with all 4 of the smaller bow compartments flooded. In June 1911, Shipbuilder magazine described this arrangement of making the ship practically unsinkable. The worst collision anyone could envision would be near one of the bulkheads, or possibly Titanic ramming into something head-on. No one had ever considered that she could scrape the side of her hull against a massive underwater object for nearly a third of her length. Unsinkable. Here's the sequence of flooding. 1. 6 compartments punctured in the Titanic's hull resulted in uneven flooding of those compartments. 2. Water rose quickly, causing Titanic's bow to slip beneath the surface. 3. At this point, over 30,000 tons of water had flowed into Titanic's bow section. 4. The enormous weight drove Titanic's bow down into the water. Around 2 a.m. as the Titanic sank, she literally broke into amidships. There were 2 design deficiencies which proved fatal to the Titanic. The hull of the Titanic had no double plates on her sides below the waterline where she struck at the iceberg, although she did have a double bottom. After the Titanic had sunk, White Star installed the second set of steel plates inside the hull of the sister ship Olympic. Titanic's much praised watertight bulkheads only came 10 feet above the waterline. If Titanic took on water, it would flood over from one compartment into the next, which is exactly what happened. There's the Marconi wireless antenna. These are called funnels, I think, these stacks. Length, 882 feet and 9 inches. Olympic and Titanic were built from the same plans. However, changes made to the Titanic during her construction made her larger and heavier than her sister ship. Built by Harland and Wolff in Belfast, Ireland. Launched May 31st, 1911. Maiden voyage April 10th, 1912. 16 watertight compartments. Maximum speed 24 to 25 knots. Anchors. 2 7.5-ton anchors. 3 million rivets, weighing a total of 1,200 tons. 2 4-cylinder triple expansion reciprocating engines, 15,000 horsepower from each reciprocating engine. 159 coal-fired furnaces, 88,000 ton coal capacity. Triple valve whistle, 1-inch thick steel plates. Lots of information. Thomas Andrews statuette, wooden block from Heartland and Wolf engines rooms, rivet. There's the rivet. The structure of the Titanic consisted of 9 decks, beginning at the top with the lifeboat or boat deck. In accordance with the usual maritime practice, the remaining decks were each designated alphabetically: promenade, bridge, shelter, saloon, upper, middle, and lower. Below these decks at the base of the ship was the orlop deck, where the engine rooms and cargo would be found. The boat and promenade decks were above the sides of the ship's hull. They did not extend the full length because the space needed for deck equipment and cargo. These 2 uppermost decks were only 50 feet shorter than the 550-foot superstructure, and their tiered profile enhanced Titanic appearance. The bridge deck was the first deck above the hull to run the full length of the superstructure. There's the captain. This is pretty cool. Passengers and crew. Guggenheim, Woodward, Thomas Andrews. Captain Arthur Henry Rastron, commander of the Carpathia, rescued 705 survivors. Strauss. J.P. Morgan and the White Star must have been staggered by the fact that Titanic had only sold a little over half the overall available berths and less than 50% in first and second class. One can imagine that the Cunard line was relieved by the Olympics, and particularly the Titanic's apparent lack of appeal. Bruce Ismay might well have been terrified over the possible wrath of his boss, J.P. Morgan. On Titanic's first voyage, Captain Edward J. Smith's behavior suggested he believed he was infallible and his ship indestructible. A new ship, minimal sea trials, a new crew, a fire in the hold, 2 breakdowns in the wireless system, plus the ice warnings, should have demanded that the captain adopt strict precautionary measures. He did not. Was this a good example of the old adage, pride cometh before a fall? There's a statuette of the captain. Some more artifacts. What are these papers? Number 5. Passenger lists. Dinnerware from the ship. First class plate, cup and saucer, menu, and toilet soap. There's toilet soap of the Titanic. Here's the menu. So here's the reproduction of the first class menu. April 14th, 1912, RMS Titanic. Dinner consisted of hors d'oeuvres, oysters, consomme, cream of barley, salmon, mousseline cucumber, filet mignon, sauté of chicken lyonnaise, vegetable marrow farci, lamb with mint sauce, roast duckling with applesauce, sirloin or beef with chateau potatoes, green peas, creamed carrots, boiled rice, parmentier, and boiled new potatoes. I don't know what half this stuff is. Punch romaine, roast squab and cress, cold asparagus vinaigrette, pâté de foie gras, celery, Waldorf pudding, peaches in chartreuse jelly, chocolate and vanilla eclairs, and French ice cream, a classic. And then draft Munich lager beer in a tankard. First class accommodation. There were several Turkish baths and saunas decorated in Arabian style. Their portholes were covered in carved Cairo curtains so that when light shone through, an Arabian look was given to the room. The first class grand staircase in 17th century William and Mary style was the crowning feature of Titanic's interior. Over 60 feet from the lower landing to the glass skylight above, it had solid oak, carved paneling all around. At the foot of the stairs was a beautiful cherub light. Midway on the stairs was a very distinctive clock in an intricate carved wooden panel. Behind the grand staircase, the first-class reception area led directly to the dining saloon. It was decorated in Jacobean style with white ceiling and walls. An artfully decorated skylight bathed the grand staircase with natural light, creating an illusion of open space. The Turkish baths were located on F deck next to the plunge swimming pool. Pretty opulent place. Some more dinnerware from the Titanic. Second class dinnerware. Looks kind of actually more fancy than first class. Here's the menu. Here's the second class menu for the Titanic, which is described here as a triple screw steamer, and I'm not sure what that means. And the Titanic was part of the White Star Line. Dinner was consomme, tapioca, baked haddock. I guess you had your choices here. Sharp sauce, wonder what that is. Curried chicken and rice, spring lamb, mint sauce, roast turkey, cranberry sauce, green peas, pureed turnips, boiled rice, boiled and roast potatoes, plum pudding, wine jelly, coconut sandwich, wow, American ice cream, assorted nuts, fresh fruit, cheese, biscuits, coffee. That almost sounds more appetizing and delicious than the first class menu. Third class. The third class dining room was larger than in second class, but more modestly appointed. Still looks nice though. Now this looks a little more plain. There's a third class model of their bunks. Here's their menu. And this is a replica of the menu for the third class passengers. Breakfast consisting of oatmeal, porridge, and milk, smoked herrings, jacket, potatoes, ham and eggs, fresh bread and butter, marmalade, Swedish bread, tea, coffee. Dinner consisted of rice soup, fresh bread, cabin biscuits, roast beef, brown gravy, sweet corn, boiled potatoes, plum pudding, sweet sauces, and fruit. Tea, cold meat, cheese, pickles, fresh bread and butter, stewed figs and rice, and more tea. Supper, gruel, cabin biscuits, and cheese. Wow. Well, again, not that bad. Not enough lifeboats. Under the 20-year-old badly outdated regulations, the number of lifeboats carried by the Titanic, though grossly inadequate, exceeded the regulator's official standards. Those standards had failed to keep pace with the increasing size of passenger liners. The 46,328-ton Titanic had 16 wooden lifeboats and 4 Engelhart collapsible boats stored on top of the officers' quarters. It is unbelievable that the Titanic exceeded the legally required number of lifeboats by 4, but needed at least 3 times that many to accommodate all who could be on board. By the late 1800s, the Atlantic had become a very busy highway. Lifeboats were considered by some as just a nuisance way to ferry people from a ship in trouble to another ship. The unrealistic theory was that if there were an accident, another ship would soon approach and render assistance. A simple calculation could tell what additional lifeboats should have been on the Titanic. Shipbuilder recommended more. Wow. Canceled lifeboat drill. Yeah, this is a disaster waiting to happen. Titanic's officers and crew had virtually no training or practice in launching her lifeboats. The lifeboats, when actually launched, only had 706 people aboard, but could have held and saved nearly 500 more lives. Incredibly, officers who survived claimed at the inquiries they believed the lifeboats would buckle if fully loaded, even though the builders, Harland and Wolff, had successfully tested the boats with the weight of 70 men. Marconi Wireless, a false sense of security. Before the miracle of wireless, ships in distress were often at sea for weeks without communication. Wireless telegraphy was fairly new when the Titanic was built, and many ships were only being equipped with it in the early 1900s. White Star had arranged that the wireless room on Titanic be a concession to the Marconi Company. The 2 wireless operators, Jack Phillips and Harold Bride, worked for the Marconi Company, not White Star. Bride had only 1 year's experience and was paid 7 cents per hour plus tips. The 2 operators had to cover 24 hours per day. Communications received from other ships by the Marconi room, especially ice warnings and distress messages, were supposed to take precedence. But for most of their time, the Marconi operators were busy transmitting passenger telegrams. A malfunction in the Marconi wireless on the night of Friday, April 12th, caused messages to be backed up, and Phillips and Bride were busy trying to catch up to the point of exhaustion. False sense of security. All these things added up. The Marconi wireless station was installed by White Star as another attraction for passengers to send messages back and forth to home or destination. The Marconi operators were paid per message. Clearly, as events were to prove, this independent, unmonitored Marconi Company franchise was an irresponsible and dangerous arrangement for the Titanic and all on board. The performance of the operators also reflected badly on the Marconi Company. Icebergs, a nightmare come true. One of the chief dangers to ships crossing the Northwest Atlantic in springtime lay in the probability of encountering masses of ice in the form of icebergs, smaller growlers, and extensive fields of solid pack ice. At the end of winter, this ice breaks off from huge glaciers that move across Greenland, then drift south in the Labrador Current. An iceberg is made up entirely of frozen fresh water. The specific gravity of fresh water is only 7/8 that of seawater, so 7/8 of an iceberg's mass is below the level of the sea. Some icebergs tower over 200 feet above the surface, and their overall weight would be tens of thousands of tons. The Titanic ran into just such a monstrous iceberg. In springtime, when entering waters where ice was a possible hazard, ships made use of the new wireless technology to warn each other of the locations where ice has been encountered. Ship safety is based on the vigilance, caution, and skill with which the captain and officers navigate and take precautions in the face of such grave hazards. Icebergs, a nightmare come true. Apparently, the expression, "a word to the wise is sufficient," was not part of the philosophy of Captain Smith or his officers. No less than 9 ice warnings were received aboard the Titanic. 2 messages were not even delivered to the bridge, but if even one of the other 7 should have caused the senior officer on duty to implement proper precautions immediately. This is a reproduction.